For 908 days, an American spaceplane circled the Earth and would not come down. The Space Force says it was up there testing experiments, but 908 days is a long time to leave some materials sitting in the sun. So if it wasn't the experiments, what kept it up there? Everything about this machine is public. You can watch it launch, you can watch it land. There are photos of it on a runway with the paint scuffed. And yet the one thing nobody has ever explained is the part that actually matters. Why so long? That gap between how much you can see and how little you're told, that's the whole story. And the strange thing is how ordinary the machine looks. It's a robot. There's no crew, no windows, nobody's flying it. About a quarter the size of a space shuttle, roughly 9 meters nose to tail. Boeing built 2 of them. It goes up on a rocket like any satellite, spends years in orbit, and then it flies itself home and lands on a runway on its own. That automatic landing was the first of its kind since the Soviet Buran back in 1988. And the cargo bay, the part everyone wants to see inside, is about the size of the bed of a pickup truck. That's the whole payload. A plain little robot with a truck bed in the back. Hold on to that, because it's the first thing that doesn't add up. And here's what surprises people. This didn't start as a military secret. It started at NASA. Back in 1996, NASA reserved the X-37 name for a civilian project, a testbed for reusable spacecraft. The early prototype got tested by hanging it under a Chinook helicopter and dropping it from about 4.5 kilometers up 7 times, letting it glide down on its own. Open science, press releases, the whole thing. And then, on the 13th of September 2004, went dark. NASA handed the program over to DARPA, the Pentagon's advanced research arm, and the moment it crossed that line, it became classified. A public research plane walked behind the curtain and never came back out. 2 years later, the Air Force announced there was now a military version, the X-37B, and it first flew in 2010. And from that very first flight, it started keeping a secret in plain sight, the length. Now watch the number climb. That first mission came down after 224 days, fine, but the next one lands higher at 468. The third, 674, and that one was the same airframe flown a second time, so they'd proven you could reuse it. Then 718 days, the one mission where the Air Force actually named the payload, an ion thruster and a NASA tray exposing 100 materials to space. Then 780. And then this one, sitting way up here at the top on its own. 908. Every single mission beat the one before it. That looks like someone climbing a ladder on purpose. And the press releases, mission after mission, name a category, space domain awareness. They never say what it was doing or why it had to be up there for 2.5 years. The 7th mission broke the pattern, and it broke it in a way that told you this is no passive science lab. It flew a stretched out orbit reaching almost 39,000 kilometers out, and then it dipped into the very top of the atmosphere, over and over, using the drag to bend its own path while barely spending fuel. In February of 2025, the Space Force even released the first photo the X-37B had ever taken of itself in orbit, the curve of the Earth behind it, somewhere over Africa. So this is not a lab sitting still, it steers and it hides. It rewrites its own orbit, and it does all of it where nobody is allowed to watch closely, which raises the stakes on the one moment you can watch, the moment it comes home. There's no pilot. One command goes up and the spaceplane does the rest by itself. It fires its own engine to drop out of orbit, bangs through turns to bleed off speed, and drops its landing gear for a runway touchdown. On the very first mission, it blew its left main tire on landing and just kept rolling straight down the center line. And the people underneath don't always get a warning. When the 908-day mission came down in Florida, around 5 in the morning, the sonic booms rolled from Jacksonville all the way inland to Orlando. And since nobody had announced it, for a lot of people it was just a double crack in the dark. When the 7th mission landed at Vandenberg near midnight, locals went to social media convinced they'd heard an explosion. You can hear it. You just can't get told what it is. So, the easy answer, the official one, it's just a testbed. And that part is true. We know some of what flew. Cadet hardware, a NASA materials tray, some seeds, all boring, all real. The most upvoted comment on one of the big videos about this thing just says, "The mission was exposing materials to space." Like it's a bonus in a strategy game. And on that, the crowd is right. There are experiments up there. So yes, it's a testbed. That was never really the question. The question is why this one? Because the testbed answer doesn't touch the 908 days, and it doesn't touch the cost. Laura Grego, a physicist at the Union of Concerned Scientists, put it bluntly: the ability to come back to Earth carries a high price. Her colleague David Wright wrote a piece titled, "How much is valet parking worth?" Wings, landing gear, heat shielding, tons of extra weight, all just to bring the thing home. Nobody builds a self-landing, top-secret spaceplane and flies it for 2.5 years to bring back some seeds. And one flight shows the Secrecy has teeth. On the 5th mission, the X-37B let go of several small satellites while it was up there. Except the United States didn't tell anyone. Under a UN convention, you register what you put in orbit. These weren't registered until after the spaceplane had already landed. The astronomer Jonathan McDowell caught it and called it a violation of the convention. Maybe the first time either the US or Russia had so openly flouted it. Whatever those satellites were for, the government was willing to break a treaty rather than say. And the people who actually know where this thing flies never got a word from the Space Force at all. This is my favorite part of the whole story, and almost nobody tells it. The government never says what orbit the X-37B is flying, so a handful of hobbyists work it out themselves. The best known is a Dutchman named Marco Langbroek. His day job used to be archaeology, Stone Age stuff, before he moved into tracking satellites. He runs a one-man operation out of Leiden, with a camera and a Chinese lens that costs about €100. €100. He points it at the sky, waits, and there. That one dot sliding through all the fixed stars. That's it. A secret American spaceplane, caught with a lens you could buy on your lunch break. There's a Canadian too, Scott Tilley, who does it by radio. Good enough that he once stumbled onto a NASA probe that had been dead for 13 years, still faintly calling home. Remember him, he comes back. These are the people who know where the X-37B is. Not the Pentagon, guys in their backyards. And in 2017, the 5th mission went up. And then, it vanished. Not from the sky, from the trackers. For 7 months, this small international club looked for it and came up with nothing. And the reason is almost funny. Look at this band here, around 40 degrees. That's where every mission before it had flown. So that's the strip they all watched, night after night. But it wasn't there. It was up here, tilted all the way to 54.5 degrees, higher than anyone thought to point. They spent half a year staring at the wrong part of the sky because they figured the Air Force would repeat itself. It didn't. It took another Dutch astronomer, Cees Bassa, finally catching it one night to end the hunt. And every time it changes orbit and doesn't pass over when it should, they have to find it all over again. The government watches its own spaceplane in silence, and a retired archaeologist with a €100 lens keeps catching it anyway. So it moves. It goes quiet for months at a time. And that behavior is exactly what feeds the loud answer, the one the internet wants to be true, that this thing is a weapon, a nuclear bomber parked in orbit. I want to walk through that carefully, because it's wrong. And being wrong is what makes it interesting. Here's the version everyone pictures. Something falls, straight down, onto a target. But watch what actually happens the moment you let go up there. It doesn't drop. It keeps racing sideways at about 7.5 kilometers a second, right alongside the spaceplane, all the way around the curve of the planet. And if you ever do bring it down, it lands a quarter of a world away from where you let go. Then there's the idea that it hunts other satellites. And this one we can actually test. Because if it were true, the trackers would have caught it. Turning in space is the most expensive thing you can do. To swing your orbit 60 degrees, you'd burn more than 90% of the whole machine just on the turn. So a spaceplane that was really chasing things would be throwing its path all over the sky. And Langbroek, watching from Leiden, would have seen it do exactly that. In 5 missions, the most he ever saw it move was about half a degree. Half a degree. And remember that truck bed. The tungsten rods people picture raining down from orbit would each weigh tons. You're not fitting a weapon worth the name in there. Brian Whedon, a former Air Force orbital analyst, called the bomber theory the most interesting but least likely explanation, and said the laws of physics are a pretty harsh mistress. So both easy answers are gone. Too expensive to be a simple testbed, too still and too small to be a weapon. Which leaves the real question, and it's a bigger one than we started with. What is worth keeping a machine like this secret and up there for 908 days? Here's where I've landed. And I'll be straight that this is a judgment, not a confession anyone handed over. The X-37B is an operational tool. It carries sensors, it maneuvers in ways ordinary satellites can't, and it lets go of things it doesn't always declare. That much is real. But the answer to the 908 days is the 908 days. It was always the length itself, not the cargo. The secrecy isn't hiding a monster. The secrecy is the point. When nobody can say what your spaceplane does, or how long it can stay up, or where it'll be next week, every rival has to prepare for all of it. And you can watch that pressure work in real time. In December of 2023, China put up its own secret spaceplane, the Shenlong. 2 weeks later, the X-37B went up. And then the Shenlong did something familiar. It released several small objects that nobody explained. And one of them started transmitting a strange repeating signal. And a guy in his backyard picked it up. It was Scott Tilley, the same man who found the dead NASA probe, now sitting there listening to a Chinese spaceplane whisper. General Chance Saltzman, who runs Space Force operations, didn't pretend it was nothing. It's no surprise the Chinese are extremely interested in ours, he said, and we're extremely interested in theirs. 2 machines, flying in silence, each one making the other guess. That's what the 908 days actually bought. Not a bomb, a question mark the other side can't afford to ignore, held open longer than anyone had ever held one before. And it's still open. Right now, as you're watching this, the 8th mission is up there. It launched in August of 2025 and, true to form, the government never released its orbit. A hobbyist named Kevin Fetter caught it 5 hours after launch, a short, bright streak in a partly cloudy sky. On board, according to the Space Force's own release, is a quantum sensor they call the highest performing one ever flown. A device that finds its way not by GPS, but by reading the tiny motion of individual atoms. And the reason they give for it is the part that gets me. It's practice for going where GPS doesn't reach at all. The moon. And past it. So the next time someone tells you this thing is a secret weapon, you can tell them the truth is quieter and it's a better story. It's a spaceplane whose entire job is to be unreadable, and it's been doing that job out in the open for over a decade. Nobody was ever told why it stayed up for 908 days. And the honest answer is that not being told is the whole idea. There's more happening at this edge of the map than one machine and one number, and I'll keep pulling on it.